Today, we're diving into the world of a soldier's life during the monumental Napoleonic Wars through the pages of The Diary of a Napoleonic Foot Soldier. This is written by a real foot soldier, Jacob Walter. He is closer to home, but not yet near safety. Let's get started. The indifference toward money was so great with me that at a point 4 days' journey from Vilna, I did not touch a cart loaded with money, which lay on the ground so broken up that the little coin barrels were rolling out. Only a few soldiers had taken any of it when I rode by. There were two reasons, though, why this money had no attraction any longer. It was nearly impossible for me to expose my hands, which were so stiff at the time that I could not feel or take hold of anything with them. I also was eager to get on so as not to be captured at the rear. This money wagon was abandoned as carelessly as any other wagon, and the traces cut off. Then if the horses were still there and could be used, the men mounted them and rode on. I hurried on, therefore, and took the highway between Königsberg and Warsaw to Thorn, where the road was thronged every day with Germans and Frenchmen. Until now there had been no thought of lodgings, nor could victuals be obtained except with money or force. One day along the road I came to a nobleman's manor house, at which I asked for bread and obtained not only bread but also butter and brandy, for there was a house servant there who could speak German. He asked me my nationality and the name of the town or village where my home was. I told him everything, that I was a Catholic, and that the late sovereign of my country had been a prince of the King of Poland. This pleased the man immensely, because when the Polish people knew that one was a Catholic, they esteemed him much above others. Then I was given also several things to eat along the way, but when I looked for my horse it was already gone. Only as a particular favor on the part of the nobleman did I get it again. Nearly everyone who came along alone with a horse had it taken from him. Several days later, while I once more drank a glass of brandy in an inn, having tied my horse in front of the door, it was stolen from me. All my searching in houses and stables was useless, and so I was set on my own feet again. Until now my feet had been wrapped with woolen cloth over my shoes, but because of the weight, this was a hindrance to walking. Now, every morning as soon as I was outdoors, it was necessary to run energetically for an hour along the way. I thought it would be impossible to keep my feet from freezing. Then with 8 German comrades I proceeded toward Ortelsburg, where the road led through a wood that it took almost 3 hours to journey through. In this region the Poles had formed robber bands wearing Cossacks' outfits with sabers, pistols, and other arms. A gang of these actually came and grabbed me, one at the right, one at the left, the third setting a saber against my breast. My comrades ahead remained unassailed because they looked somewhat more like beggar Jews than I. Now the robbers tore off my fur coat, cape vests, and my headcloths, threw me to the ground, and were about to pull off my boots too. In the meantime, they found my money, to the amount of 18 rubles, in my cape pocket. This was my salvation. Had they not found the money, I would have been left to freeze to death unclothed. As it was, however, they threw down the coat and the cape again, along with one of the 2 vests, and traveled off with the money, the fur, the other vest, and 2 headcloths. During this time my comrades kept hidden in the distance, and when they saw that I was set free, they came running back and dressed me, for I was so stiff that I was not in a condition to dress myself. That same evening I came to Ortelsburg, and for the first time was given regular quarters. From this city I went on to Niklawi, and at that place received quarters again. It was just Christmas Eve, a date I would not have known if I had not learned it from the landlord. Here I also washed myself for the first time, but I could not rid myself of the lice, or rather of my sovereigns, because if I had murdered as many as 1,000, then the many other thousands would have taken revenge on me. For this reason, I did not undertake an attack on them. The washing of my hands and face proceeded very slowly because the crusts on my hands, ears, and nose had grown like tree bark, with cracks and coal-black scales. My face resembled that of a heavily bearded Russian peasant, and when I looked into the mirror, I was astonished at the strange appearance of my face. I washed then for an hour with hot water and soap. However, I felt I had only become somewhat smoother and lighter, but I could not notice any removal of the blackness in the scales. Only where I had not been shaving did a somewhat lighter skin appear. In this city, as in all Poland, there were also newly established regiments which had been enlisted for the reinforcement of our army. These people were on horseback, armed with lances, and had on thick coats and clothing in which hardly any of them could move about. I saw several who made a desperate effort to mount a horse, only to fall down again on the other side when they thought themselves up. As we were departing the next day, the gate toward Thorn and Warsaw was barricaded against us, and everyone was supposed to go back to Königsberg according to the orders of the commandant of the city. This commandant acted on orders. However, we knew the condition of the army better. We were hardly outside the Königsberg gate when we all marched to the left again toward the Thorn highway, in order not to run into the midst of the enemy near Königsberg. Indeed, it cost us enough effort to get to Thorn before the Russians. With a delay of another 2 days, it would not have been possible. On the way, we met a column of Bavarians who were en route from Königsberg to the gathering place at Plock. They told us the news that the Württembergers, too, were gathering in Thorn, and that the Germans all had permission to go home. This report strengthened my spirits again, since I had always thought that at the Vistula the army would take up its station and be reorganized, and therefore that no one would get home or be discharged before another 2 years or so, even if all should go well. I had been convinced of this by enlisting in Poland. Finally, I came to Thorn, and my only silver ruble, which had escaped notice in my little watch pocket at the time I was plundered, was spent. Here I went to the town hall to obtain quarters, but could not get in on account of the mob. By chance, a German soldier came along and said that on this street, at a certain number, there lived a commissioner from Württemberg, and that he would give out passports and travel money. I presented myself immediately, and obtained a 5-franc thaler and a pass for the 3rd convoy to Inoroslav. Hence I was one of the last to come to Thorn. The same night I lodged in a house and bought some bread and wine, for free quarters were not to be thought of. One could scarcely creep along the streets on account of the throngs of people. Early in the morning I traveled across the bridge and saw with astonishment that the city during this year of war had been developed into an important fortress. However, they had used only wooden walls and sand around the high walls. I now grew weaker and weaker, and only with great exertion did I reach the city of Inoroslav. Here I reached the 3rd convoy of our people, and presented myself immediately to the commander, who asked, "Where are you from?" "From the army," was my answer. "So you are also one of those Moscow bums," he retorted, and that was the welcome at my return. I was given arms and had to guard the park that same night. Spending this night in the cold again gave me the fever. The next day I was even forced to continue my way on foot alone, but toward evening it became impossible. Either to die on the way or to go off to a village seen from the highway, that was my only choice. I decided then to go into the village. Here I went into a room and immediately lay down on the floor, where the fever shook me frightfully. The people there wanted to give me whiskey and something to eat, but I could drink nothing but water, and all those who looked at me made gestures of hopelessness. I naturally could not understand their conversation, but I could plainly feel their pity. In the morning I gathered together my last strength, left my arms behind because of my weakness, and only toward evening did I arrive in the station town 2 hours away, where I found my convoy had already marched off again. I did not want to go to the quartering office first to obtain lodging, but lay down in a tavern where there were 2 Westphalian soldiers who also had the fever at its worst stage. I still could not eat anything, but could only drink beer, which I could get there. The next day a citizen of the town came to the inn too, and asked what ailed us 3. He could speak German. We told him that each of us had the fever. "The fever?" said he. "I can help you get rid of that." This he really did, sitting down, writing 3 notes, and saying that each of us should now eat one of them. I, at least, had little faith that such a thing could help. Nevertheless, I ate mine too, and when the time came for me to be shaken frightfully again, I waited longer and longer, and actually, the fever left not only me but also my other 2 comrades at the same time. This seemed miraculous and delightful to all of us, and we thanked this good man, without whom certainly none of us would have escaped death. The next day, when we could partake of something to eat again, we obtained a wagon from the police, and I reached the convoy again outside the city of Posen. However, I was no longer able to walk from then on. The march went on through Posen toward Crossen. The cold was still extraordinarily great, and since I could not walk, I froze terribly. Also at night we came into the most miserable huts where even a healthy person had a hard time bearing the cold and the smoke in the rooms with their earthen floors. The convoy consisted of 175 men. However, 1 or 2 men of this number were brought dead to their lodgings every day. Our nourishment was still insufficient, and medicine was not to be hoped for. Although the groaning and shrieking on the wagons continued without interruption, and several who were severely sick were crushed to death by the healthier people, since the space on the wagons was too small, nevertheless the impulse to help one another was still quite dulled. This concludes the 11th part of the story. Thank you very much for listening. What do you think of Walter's adventures? Please subscribe for more episodes and leave a comment.